right, welcome everybody to Beyond Purchasing Your Policies. And I have to say, there are a lot of people registered for this, which, you know what, just made us so happy when we saw people interested in what do you do after you purchase the policies. That's fantastic. 6 years ago, I don't think I would have got one person to a video a webinar of that nature. But just telling me that the culture is changing and people are really doing their best to get on top of things. And it's just great. So we've got 27 here. I think we've got about 70 or 80 registered. So they could trickle in or they could watch by recording. But thank you for coming. So what I'm going to do is get straight into it. Anybody here who wants to just put a thumbs up if you've never met me before? Bobby can tell me. Sharon, welcome. Mapta, Mel, welcome. We've spoken on the phone. Amber, Giselle, welcome to anyone who hasn't met me and to anyone watching this who hasn't met me for future in the future by recording. Okay, let's do it. So I'm going to share screen with you. I do have a little bit of a PowerPoint I've put together for you. Share my entire screen. Alrighty, so I will just move the faces so I won't be able to see you, but that's so I can see the PowerPoint. Wonderful. So anything you have a question about, if it's one you really want answered, please, say it in real time in the chat so that we don't get 5 slides on and then answer that. Because if you're thinking it, then somebody else is probably thinking about it too. So without further ado, let's pop it onto presentation mode. And here we go. Beyond purchase. And, this is about implementing those NDIS policies and templates. As I said, this sector has got some different levels of maturity. When NDIS first rolled out, there were some of the older providers from the last generation who came into this, but there's been a lot of new ones. And so very different perspectives across the sector. And now we have, upwards of 260,000 providers in the market, some sole traders, of course. It's an interesting sector. And I guess one of the more important things that I've seen is a prevalence of the not implementing the actual policies and procedures. But it's, like I said, it's starting to turn around because just to have a room full of people that have come to see this, that is so good for me to see. Now, I want to tell you one story. So when when the standards first came out for the NDIS, that was the ones beyond the ones that were called the minimum verification, which were sort of 4 little tiny things called standards. When these first came out, the 2018 rendition of them, I started auditing. And my very first audit that I went to was in Melbourne. It was really interesting, really lovely couple. I think they'd worked in the sector before this, but not very much, probably as support workers, I suppose. And she was asking a lot of questions and she was having a lovely time and I was enjoying myself too. But when I got to, half the day or three quarters of the first day, and I said, wow, they're really good questions that you're asking me. And it's supposed to be the other way around. They're really good questions you're asking me. And you know what? I know the answer to those because they're actually in your policies and procedures. And the reason I know they're in there is because I read them front to back because I've come to audit you. And I said, as kindly as I could, I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to guess that you've never read your policies and procedures, have you? And she said, no. And I thought, gosh, And that was my that was my first audit. I saw a lot of that. That was not something that was on its own. So let's see. What do I want you to take away after today? The role of policies and procedures in business, but in NDIS, which is a health and human service high risk service. What are the non-negotiables within the policies and procedures? How to cultivate that culture of using the policies and procedures, meaning having a quality service delivery. It's really hard to say, in fact, it's impossible. You cannot say that you have a quality culture in your organization if you don't know and use your policies and procedures because it's intricate to quality service. How policies and procedures lead continuous quality improvement, good reputation, and successful business. They're not there to be a thorn in your side. They are there to protect everyone, but they're also there to build an incredible business. And that's exactly what they can do. So, a bit of a discussion. Pop it in the chat. Feel free to say it if you want to. What do you ask when you don't, who do you ask when you don't know how to do something? You guys. Now, I'm going to guess you're not support workers. But if you are, bung in, please say whatever. Doesn't matter what you do. Who do you ask when you don't know how to do something? What do you guys do? Just throw in what you would normally do when you don't know how to do something.
Hi, Gina. So we have a couple of answers on the chat there. We have some answers like HR, Google, um, their boss.
Yeah, I would expect to hear that. Yeah. Any others?
And we have colleagues as well. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a compliance team in your company,
Yeah.
a consultant as well is one of the answers that we see on the chat.
Yep. Okay, that's good. Okay, so there's always going to be a time when, you don't know and you don't know the answer to something and you need to go and ask someone or seek information from somewhere. Um, what we have in the majority is support workers. So that's you. You might be mostly managers. Um, you know, like I said, some of you might be support workers. You're probably mostly managers. But what if the majority of the staff, of course, are support workers? What if it's usually them that want to know what to do? And so that's our biggest problem. Where are they going? Who are they asking? And unless you're cultivating a culture, and even for those people who are just not used to asking for anything, um, or how to do something, they'd rather guess, oh, I'm going to put it out there. Some of them don't care. It's just a job. They're going to do whatever, is simplest to do. If they don't ask, they're never going to know. So we need to cultivate a culture within your staff of asking when they don't know something. But it goes further than that as well. So first of all, we have to cultivate the culture of asking when you don't know. That is not where it stays though. Okay, but we'll get to that. So what is the role of a policy and procedure? It protects your staff from harm and it will give them direction. So it's not just about giving them direction. That's really important. But when I tell owners of businesses and managers who may be held accountable or board members that are liable for, in NGOs and not for profits, it'll protecting staff from harm. They get that because you're going to be liable in the end when someone's hurt. It protects your clients from harm. First of all, we want to protect any human being that's working in your service, but especially we're not there to harm the clients. We're supposed to be there to support the clients. So the next area is to protect you, the business owner, or you, the manager who's working as a proxy for the owner. You're protecting this business from risk and liability. That's what the policies and procedures are for. I would say a large probably chop it into thirds, that's one third of what they're for, to protect you from outrageous insurance claims, from coroner's court findings where you might be found liable of as a contributor or complicit to somebody's death, from work health safety matters that go to court, workers' compensation claims, which can cost you a fortune. And there's always that, what's it going to cost the owner operator? And what's it actually costing the person? A lot of people's lives are completely ruined by a workers' comp claim. I don't know if you know, you probably do by now, but I'll say it again. In the uh, now that we have NDIS, support work is the second most dangerous position in Australia today. I can tell you it wasn't that 20 years ago. It is second only to, would somebody like to guess, and don't Google it, would somebody like to guess what it's second only to? You can Google it if you want, I don't mind. But I just thought I'd see if you could get it off the top of your head. It's second only to bricklaying, and they're completely different industries, aren't they? Never in my life would I thought I'd be alive when support working was actually second only to bricklaying. Some of the claims have left people, participants themselves, or uh, lifelong um, disability, in receipt of disability pensions, and major payouts for the harm that's been done to them. And a lot of it's psychosocial, and that's, you can't see it. Uh, a wheelchair isn't going to fix it. A pair of crutches isn't going to fix it. Assistive technology is probably not going to fix it, but you're still, many people are unable to work again because of their psychiatric damage that has occurred to them. And that can be off the back of a physical injury as well. So work safe claims, fair work claims. I mean, they were always the big one in my not for profit, managing large not for profit days. Once you get your first fair work claim, you figure out and you understand how to not get your next one, because if it's not done right, you're going to be liable. And I think everyone's learning that now. I think people are really, it's maturing, which is really nice to be able to say. But I must always remember that there are newcomers coming into this market at a rate of around 7% of the market. Repeat, we're getting, if you, we're getting 7%. Just say that properly. If we've got 300,000 currently operating as NDIS providers, 7% more are coming in with each quarter. Okay. So there's always going to be people who don't know. And it's not to say that everybody who's already here knows either. Okay. Um, the role of we'll keep going with this, to lay those foundations for your business. It's not just about your practice in terms of clinical or what you do in service delivery. It's everything else to ensure your ops are working the way they're supposed to and against the standards. How else would you know? How else would you know how to work in alignment with a set of quality standards if it wasn't written down somewhere? To provide one part of the evidence of audit. So let's talk about audit, and it's not the be all and end all, but it's important because it's what keeps you in business, and it's the only thing at this point, or in fact, everywhere in every health and human service, a set of quality standards really is the only way to be able to do everything you can to keep people safe. It's the tool to do that. So your policies and procedures make up one third of what you need as being seen as good enough and in alignment with the standards. And it's a piece of evidence that we're looking for, policies and procedures. The other thing we're wanting too, when I say policies and procedures, is we want all the tools and the templates that go with that as well. So that's one third of what we're looking for from you at audit. So we need them. but we have to triangulate your evidence. We don't just look at your policies and procedures and, unless you're a provisional audit you're going through a provisional audit where you've got no clients and all we've got to look at is your policies and procedures, your forms and templates, your credentials, your ID, etc., all of that sort of stuff. Let's just say you've already got, lots of clients. As an auditor, we've got to see that's great. I love their policies and procedures. They're absolutely A1. But that's not enough because when you've got clients, we also want to see that you're implementing them. Can anyone tell me what would be one way to show me that there's lots of ways, but you can give me any one you like. I've come to audit you. You're implementing. You've got clients. Um, I've come back for your midterm now, right? And I'm doing your audit. You've got your policies and procedures and you've got clients. What would I look for to see if you're implementing those policies and procedures, which is what you're supposed to do after you buy them? Tell me what I would look for to see if you're implementing them. There's some low-hanging fruit in that question. There's lots of things that you could tell me, but what's the low-hanging fruit for seeing if you're implementing your policies and procedures? Any guesses, anyone?
So, Gina, we have answers on the chat
Good.
saying SIL house documents, feedback, evidence of quality outcomes from the participants. So those are some of the
Yeah, very
answers we
good.
have there. Yeah.
Very good. So we're looking to see that you're actually using them. So it's not unusual when I was a commission auditor or in doing lots of internal audits that we do now. It's not unusual to see that somebody might be doing something, but there's actually no evidence that they've done it. So there's no way that we can say you've implemented it because we're missing a piece of the puzzle. And a piece of the puzzle is not just that you've done a really good service or this person's really happy. It's where's the evidence to say that you've done this, because we can't take your word for it. So we want to see that the biggest example of the implementation, which is what's beyond buying your policies, is either to see no assessment, which is not unusual, or no risk assessment, or a combination of that where we might see pick and choosing what they're going to answer in the assessment, or they didn't like the assessment that they bought with their package, so they went and made their own. Nice to try that, but have you done an audit against the practice standards for that? So we see all sorts of different combinations of that. So if you're not using those things that are required, and it's really hard for most people to know what's a non-negotiable what is negotiable. That's actually what I think the trick is. And it's really hard to know that. And I guess it's kind of like something that I've been doing for 20 years. And, even the people that work for me now, like Ali, she's been with me like 4 years. She knows off the top of her head pretty much what a non-negotiable is in terms of this sector. Um, so we're still trying to triangulate that, and your policies and procedures play the role in that. We also, whoops, here we go. Here's a nice graphic for you. So if you're trying to meet the quality standards, which, we're trying to take those policies out of their packet and use them and implement them because they help us meet the quality standards, which might help us not to do harm. It might help us to reduce our liabilities in every way that I mentioned before, and it might help to run a really schmick business. Okay. So we're going to interview your staff. We're going to do file audits, and we're going to look at your policies and procedures. So yes, you are all right. All of these things, these forms, all ranges of forms that are completed to a high level, the level that we need. And then we have to corroborate that. So here's 30%. Here's 30%. I am sharing, aren't I? Please
Yes,
tell me
yes,
I'm
you
sharing.
are.
Thank goodness. Here's
Yes.
30% of, I call it a pie chart. Here's 30%, but here's the other 30. And this is the kicker, This is the one that will help us to really know whether it's happening. Okay, so there you go. So this is living and breathing and doing implementation the way it should be done. Step-by-step process for implementing a policy and procedure. Some of this stuff is going to come from my own experience, and I'll let you know when those little bits come in. I mean, a lot of that is, but you've got to, let's just say, you buy something off the shelf. A lot of people will just go and use them, and that's okay, sort of. I've tried to write ours so that they're really comprehensive for a really good reason, because most people don't know what to do. And that wasn't something that I could lie in bed peacefully at night knowing. So rather than have short and sharp and not very much, I put in as much of my knowledge as I possibly could in alignment with those standards. Okay? Because it really was important to me seeing what I'd seen as the auditor for a few years for the commission, and then seeing what I see in consulting, which has been going for 6 years now. So it is really good to change them up a bit to make them reflect what you do in specific circumstances. That would be best practice. I'm not saying that you have to do it. You want to then cultivate a culture of implementation. I don't see the point in having really good policies and procedures if you haven't got everybody using them. And here's what I would tell you. I learnt this when I became a manager for the first time. In the beginning, I used to answer all their questions. And then I thought, I haven't got any time to do my own work because I'm so busy telling everybody what the answer to their question is when it's in the policy and procedure. So I learnt from that and from having a mentor, push them back to the policy and procedure. So for the last 20 years, that's exactly what I've done. Go and look it up yourself. Now, if it's not in there, come back to me because that's really good information for me to have. Yeah. Or I may know the answer to it, but I'm still going to say, go and see what the policy and procedure says. That's how I would usually say it. Why don't we see what the policy and procedure says? So we want to cultivate curiosity from the previous slide. We want people to be asking questions. We want them to think, I wonder what I'm supposed to be doing. We want to also cultivate that culture of implementation, which is referring to those policies that you could have spent anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 for. Or equally, you could have spent that much money of your own time writing them. Cultivate the culture of implementation. If you want your life to be easier and you want to be able to not have to carry the whole world on your shoulders or your manager do the same, and you've got to cultivate this empowerment in your staff to want to know, to have to know, and to make a step to know. Okay, you need to review them. They're nothing without a review. You must review them. Now, I know that there's lots of companies, and I'm one of them. We do the updates for you. We do send out what we've updated. We need to do that. That's what we have to do. I still think that it is a good idea if you want to cultivate a culture of quality, right? If you want to, then I would be having those policies one every month or one every fortnight. Whenever you have a staff meeting, there's 10 minutes set aside for going through, or 15 set aside for going through that policy. You might think, oh, 15 minutes, I haven't got 15 minutes to give to that. Well, do you know what you'll come out with by people knowing just a little bit about each of those policies? It's well worth the time spent doing it, and it's cultivating education, knowledge, culture of quality, a culture of learning that these policies are not supposed to sit on the shelf. They're meant to be living and breathing and work and helping you to stay safe, do well, prosper, and all of those things. Now, one of the big things that happens, what do you think we see when we see we're thrilled to bits when we see someone has a continuous quality improvement action, even if we see one, and we're even more thrilled and get excited and jump up and down when we see several. But what do you think we get disappointed at? if we don't see that there's a review. Why do you think that's disappointing for us when all we want to do is give out lots of really good, conformity assessments? What do you think is disappointing about not seeing a review of a continuous quality improvement action that was put in place?
Hi, Gina. So we have an answer from Jessica on the chat. She said, no reflective practice on effectiveness.
Mm.
And from Carnillo, no review, so not knowing what to improve on.
Yeah, well, what happens is, so let's just say in this example here, you're doing reviews of policy, you've got reviews of what's going on, something's not working well, so you put a continuous quality improvement action in your register for CQI, and then 3 months later, it's really working. That's fab. Let's just keep going. But what you haven't done is sat down and collaborated with your team to get them engaged, and you haven't asked everybody formally, is this working? Yes. Oh, great. Shall we keep it? Yeah. Wouldn't want to get rid of it. Great. Let's document that. Okay. It's now become business as usual. Now, what happens there, which is not happening? What happens when we've adopted a practice as business as usual? What is the first thing we would do after that? We've written it down in our CQI. What is the first thing we have to do when we've adopted that trial practice or activity and we've gone, yeah, we love it. Let's do it. This is business as usual for us now. What do you have to do after that? Anyone know?
Yes. So we have answers on the chat, Gina, from Jessica again. She said, ensure it aligns with the existing policies and procedures. Marie-Lise said it's to update your policy. Carol said, continually reviewing and improving. And from Carnillo, there's feedback from people who implemented.
These are all right, and all of them would be welcome. The most important one you'd start with is it's got to go in your policy. If it's not in your policy, you're working outside your policy and procedure. So it's got to go in your policy. It's got to be circulated to everybody. If you're changing policies, and believe me, it happens, if you're changing policies and you're not telling everyone about it by an update or 10 minutes in that staff meeting or whatever it is that's going to be effective for you and your guys, if you're not doing that, they're not going to know. They're not going to know how to do it. Most people go, oh, God, I didn't know that had changed. We don't want that. That's not what you want. That's not what you see in New South Wales Health. That's not what you see in big organisations where people can die en masse. You really need to follow these processes. So every answer was correct and they all belong in a certain, step by step process. And that's what a good CQI register will do. It will lead you through that process so there's nothing to wonder about. And if you don't complete that entire register, it's on you. It's on the person that didn't complete it. Yeah, because it's there to be completed so that you can, and it's but when I make those things, it's so I can sleep at night knowing I've given them all the information they need to be able to do it right. Okay, so completing processes, very important. This is all part of implementing those policies and procedures that you either wrote or you paid a lot of money for. So more about that. If you're starting from scratch, that's great. If you're starting from scratch or you purchase policy templates from a consultant, please do your due diligence when you select a consultant. The consultant in the market, they've what's the word? Exploded. There's so many. I want you to do your due diligence. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about any, but you must find out what the most important things are. Who are they? How long have they worked in? Did they ever work in a disability service? Did they ever work in a mental health service that collaborated with a disability? What are you delivering? Disability services. Do they know anything about that? And I think you will find there will be a number of people out there who just don't know. So what happens for me is that I get people who come in who have spent $10,000, gone to audit, great big compliance notice put up against them, and then they've got to pay more money to fix the policies and procedures. Don't let that happen to you. Ask around. Everybody's website's fabulous except mine. Mine's bad, but you know, the website means nothing. Please make sure that they're everything that you need. Okay. If you're starting from scratch, please be careful of AI. Don't be thinking that it's going to write your policies perfectly because it's not. Okay. And I put it to the test. I wanted to see what it can do. So please be careful. And I really admire anyone who's writing their own. Once you have your starting point from the policies, there's a few policies that don't tell you the how, the why, the when, and the where. Okay? And that's what we've noticed. What did you think like, really? Bottom line, your policy is supposed to tell you what to do. And that's, secondarily, they're aligning to the practice standards, yeah, which then align to the legislation and the codes and the rules and everything else. Yes, they have to align to the practice standards because that's where you work in that sector, but they also have to tell you what to do. And it's sometimes really clear to see who's never worked either on the front line or management or in the sector at all, right? Because they're not telling you what to do. Can you honestly say that you know what to do when you've read something? This is the litmus test for, if you're picking up a policy, ask for a sample, read it, a couple of samples, look at your own policies. Are they telling you how to do service? Are they telling you how to do something? If they're not really going to help you too much. Because it doesn't matter if they went through audit and they passed, like some will, but are they telling you what to do? That's where you can put your own spin on them. That's where, okay, you've got these policies, you know they went through audit, but they're not saying what we do. So put what you do without removing anything that might be considered a mandatory or a non-negotiable that has to remain there, but you can add your own flair in those policies. The NDIS is a different set of quality standards to aged care, so they're not going to be the same as community health, same as allied health. You can't use existing policies from either of those standards, and believe me, we've seen people do it, and they had to learn the hard way, one particular person, and I understand that this person didn't understand that support coordination was not going to be able to be met under his aged care standards. Go figure. But they weren't. So he had to learn the hard way. And there you go. But as long as you learn, that's all that matters. Read through your policies. Check they explain the how. They should be your source of truth for how this organisation runs. If you're not there, if the manager's not there, guess what those policies and procedures are for? They're to tell people what to do, and that's what you want them to do. So I can still remember in my early days, I don't know what to do. Just go and read the policy and procedure. If you don't know what to do, you read the policy and procedure. Many policies and procedures today will not tell you what to do. And also they may not tell the person what to do in your business. And that's what you want them to do. They may feel like they have a lot of legislation or mumbo jumbo. And I know this might be annoying, but it does need to be there. And it's there because really the quality standards want to know that you know, and it's actually in black and white. And it does let you know what is legally required. It's information that needs to be there. So let's have some example of, here's an example of a poorly written policy. Ready? The quality indicator says, so obviously we're writing to the quality indicator, but some policies that are written just to that, they're not really telling you what to do. They're just writing to the quality indicator. So here's one set of policies from someone in the market. Each participant is supported to understand under what circumstances supports can be withdrawn. Access to supports required by the participant will not be withdrawn or denied solely on the basis of dignity of risk of choice that has been made by the participant. So that's saying what, okay, that's the quality indicator. So really, it's a exit policy and procedure. The organisation will ensure that the participants are supported to understand under what circumstances support can be withdrawn. Access to supports required by the participant will not be withdrawn or denied solely on the basis of dignity and risk and the choice that has been made by the participant. What's wrong with this? There's the quality indicator. What does that sample policy, what do you think might be wrong with that? Can you see? And I'm moving in particular ways. What do you think might be one of its issues?
Would it be something about like how are the participants supported to understand how they
Absolutely. It's definitely, it doesn't have the how. It doesn't have the, I mean, it might have a bit of why. But all it really does is, and you see a lot of this, it's regurgitated the part of the quality indicator. Can you see that? So if you read that or one of your staff read that, you would be forgiven for not really knowing, okay, I get what you want me to do, but I don't really get how. Okay. So, it doesn't give the how. It should say, we just took it from ours. The organisation will ensure that participants are supported to understand under what circumstances support can be withdrawn. The participant will be given service agreement which outlines A, their responsibilities, and B, that if they do not uphold their responsibilities, supports may be withdrawn. During onboarding, the staff will get verbal confirmation that this was understood. Access to supports required by the participant will not be withdrawn or denied. See, we didn't have anything to tell someone how. So, I mean, anyone who with a lot of experience would go, oh, I know how to do that. But that's not the case for everyone, is it? So you could be forgiven for wondering why somebody didn't know how and therefore couldn't prove to us that they had made sure that this was understood. Make sense? Hope it does. I know it does. The policies are written. Now what? Okay, what are you going to do once you've just written your policies? What's the first thing you guys are going to do? Well, give me an idea. What are you going to do? Bought your policies or you've written. What are you going to do first?
get some feedback?
Oh, that's a good idea. I like that. Yeah.
Hygiene answers on the chat says review, educate everyone, and implement once it's approved.
Implement's a big word, isn't it? I would say to you right now, what does implement mean to you? Because implement's a really good word, but I think that's what most people don't know how to do. So if you've got a couple of things up your sleeve that you'd say, oh, here's what I do when I'm about to implement them, please, I mean, like pop it in the chat.
Mamta shared that it's putting it into practice. Linda also shared it's more testing it. Giselle shares it, ensure it's accessible to everyone who needs them.
Okay, accessible to everyone. I give it a tick. What was the first one?
Put it in practice.
Yeah, that's just another broad statement of like implement. So it hasn't got any meat in it. Like you don't know what that means. So yeah, but how? It's just like implementing it. And the next one was
Testing it.
testing. It's good. So that means give it an opportunity. Yep, give it an opportunity. Let it run. See what happens. Get feedback. So the feedback, etc. So yeah, they're sort of like they're all good, but be careful of not using implement and put in practice. They're not unpacking anything. They're like that quality indicator policy that we saw, which says, yeah, that's it, but how do we do it? Because I guess whoever said that probably knows what implementing means, or putting it in practice means, whereas I can promise you 80% of the sector, support workers and owners and managers, they won't know. And that's our problem. We're not, we're not running on a pre-NDIS knowledge base. Yeah. So they won't know what that is, which is why I'm here doing this. That said, I kind of ran this sort of thing anyway before the NDIS came out, but that was usually just for the frontline workers. Yeah. So you've got to think about that first step. It is going to be to roll it out, but how? What is a successful policy rollout? It's going to be not just popping it in the OneDrive or something like that. It's going to be giving it some thought about, well, what do I want people to think about this? Okay, so do I want to engage them in it? Do I want to just throw it at them? Am I going to have a set of modules that will explain it to them? Am I going to make certain policies need to be read by certain people? There's a range of things, and it is about finding what's going to be right for your organization. If you're wanting to make culture a culture of implementation, you want a culture of implementation. You don't just want to implement once and then implement again in 3 years. You want that culture, that fabulous organization that comes away from its audits with 3 or 2 best practices that grows on a strong foundation and then grows financially, yeah, and has incredible outcomes where everybody wants to come to that place. You want that fabulous culture which is ongoing and embedded. So there needs to be something in it for the workers. What do you think you could what could be in it for your workers? What do you think you do for your workers to make them so there's something in it for them to know what's in those policies and procedures? What could you do?
Involve them in the process.
One of the best things that you could do. Yeah, and there are evaluation papers that say exactly that, and I think those ones started to come out in the mid 2000s, and one in particular, might have even been earlier than that, but I'm probably talking about Australian ones. So definitely there was a marked time in practice in large NGOs and the funders like ADEC and New South Wales Health, where best practice became about involving everyone in it, because your person, and probably you yourself, if you put yourself in that position, if you're involved in something, you are far more likely to take ownership of it and to be involved in it and want to follow it. But if you feel something is being done to you, not with you, you are less likely to want to take it up. And it's kind of how I feel about, I have this feeling to the NDIS practice standards. I don't, but any kind of tokenistic participation in that wouldn't have worked for me. But I feel these are done to everyone and they're awful. I think they're awful. And I think a lot of people who have time to think about that probably think the same. A lot of you are probably just trying to do your job and trying to run your business, but other people who are having to be front up to those practice standards all the time from an audit point of view, a lot of us are thinking, well, they're just about the worst thing we've ever seen. Because a lot of people weren't included in it. I don't know who, I do know some of the people that were involved in it, but it wasn't enough because they don't make a lot of sense in places. So yeah, you're not going to get engagement you're not going to get as good engagement unless people are feeling a part of it. You're going to get much better engagement that way. So there's lots of ways that you can do that. What will happen, and people need to know this, that when you're that centre of intelligence, who are the people that you promote? People that know the answers to things, the people that do things well, the people that are helping other people because they're giving them the right answers. So, there's usually a promotion or a seniority or something like that in it for people. Because unless you have to, you're not going to give more shifts or give a promotion to the person who isn't doing well. Although I do see that happen, and that makes me very sad. You need to model the behavior you want to see. If you're not doing it too, your people are going to pick up on that and think, nah, not interested. So you need to role model this. So that culture of implementation. So the next time somebody asks you, how do I do blah, blah, blah? Before you answer it, because I know it's easier. I know it's much easier to pick up the toy than to give someone an opportunity to go and pick up the toy when they're a baby. Yeah? I know it's easier. But what you want to say is, oh, why don't we see what the policy says about that? Not go and read the policy. Say, why don't we see what the policy says about that? Because I'd really like to know if it's up to date. Anything that you can, and you get your managers and your team leaders to do exactly the same thing. So you're continually promoting this culture. So it's not a do quality, because we're always doing continuous quality improvement. That's how we roll. That's how we do our business. So, you're modeling it, and you're leading the way. And if you've got a leader, and I don't think I put this in the slides, but I will say I want you to keep your eyes open for your quality champions. And it's so nice to be able to say quality instead of compliance, because when I first got here, nobody knew what the word quality was. Well, some people did, but you had to use the word compliance to make people listen. But now we're able to say a little bit more quality and compliance, which is really progress again for a sector. So look for your compliance and quality champions. You watch around, and every training I used to go to before I had a consultancy, this one in the NDIS, I would see the looks on people's eyes when I would talk about certain things, and I would go up to their bosses and say, I know this person gets really excited when we talk about data, or this person gets really excited when I talk about continuous quality improvement, or etc. So start choosing and developing your people all the time, and give them more responsibility where you can see that they have an aptitude, and that is again embedding. If someone asks you a question, oh yeah, I've said that one. You got to try and be approachable and encourage people to ask questions about the policies. I will be the first to admit that I can be a bitch, and I can be cranky, and but I try not to be, and I don't mean to be, but sometimes I think some people's temperament is just different to others, and I can be a little bit passionate about things, I suppose, is the nicest way to explain that. But we've got to try and be approachable, and not make it a scary thing for somebody to ask you a question. That really helps. I think I've gotten a lot better at that over the last 25 years. My very first mentor said, listen, if you're going to be a bitch all the time. Don't be a bitch sometimes and not a bitch later, because they won't even know whether you're Jekyll or Hyde. So I thought, that's really funny. So I think I've gotten to the don't be a bitch kind of end of that, rather than do it all the time. So, but yeah, it's scary for people. They won't come near you, and you don't want that. Every staff member should be reading those policies. No excuses. Everyone. Now, I don't mean every single policy in your policy and procedure manual. Some policies for some, others for others. And quite frankly, I think it was like that my first experience as the NDIS auditor years ago, when I said, I don't think you've read your policies, have you, darling? And I thought, oh, what can I do about that? I mean, because it just happened again and again and again and again, and it still happens. And that's when I developed some modules years ago, which were just unpacking the main policies, so that how could these people, A, give everyone some knowledge around those policies, and B, be able to evidence that, and protect their business and all the rest, and protect participants as well. But yeah, it was a really big problem, and I thought, well, that was a good solution, and it has been. There are other ways. You can ask them to read them, or you can do things like bring them one policy to staff meeting and quarantine 10 or 15 minutes each time. you will welcome the learning that's going to come out of that, and you will discover your champions in whatever role they're going to be a champion in. So make their orientation include reading the policies that are relevant to their role. Don't give them something that's not. Okay, so give them little packages. You don't have to give the whole policy. For example, if you're looking at support workers, you're going to have different arrangements of intelligence and patience with people. You could take your policies and procedures and ask AI to turn these into something that is a snapshot of the most important things that are going to outline what is of a liability nature, and what is really important to this organization, the way we do things, etc. And they could just make a really good language for that to give as a takeaway that they can hang on to. But you do want to see that they've read them. I will say that, from a liability point of view, we would say, we've made them sign. They said they have. If anything goes wrong, it is on them. And to take that one step further from a decency point of view, you've gotten rid of the liability. That's really good, but someone still might get hurt. So, but I can leave you with that dilemma to figure out for yourselves. So why would you do this? Well, you're responsible as a manager. If your staff don't know what to do, you'll be the one paying that settlement, or not getting the insurance claim paid. How do you know if they're going to read them? You talk to them. You can ask them questions. You can have that ongoing engagement with supervision, etc., where you can find out how much they do know. We're coming to the end, but we've got 5 minutes over, if that's all right with everyone. You can do tests on your staff. I've seen people do that. I've seen some of them will engage with an LMS, and others will just do their own. So that, there's so much that you can do, and there's a range of products on the market that you can access as well. So the sky's the limit, really. One of the things I would always do, especially when somebody's not very good at something, is I give them a little job to do, a project, so that they get better at it. I don't tell them that, but they might be very poor in one area, and I say, all right, I'm going to need, this is your, what I call portfolio. I would give people all their portfolios, and that would develop them in certain areas and allow me to just see if they're going to grow, and that's where they might have their promotion start from, but we definitely want to develop them when they're not good at something. Don't keep them away from it unless it's like dire. Have that rotation of being in charge of the policy updates. Don't make the same person all the time. Rotate that round, getting everybody else involved. Remember, we want that culture. We want to keep it going, and you can't do everything yourself. So have others that can carry that flame as well. If the policies, someone said before, if the policies aren't accessible, who's going to read them? If you have really long policies, but you want something that's more accessible, that's always doable too. So have something that they can access in the field on their phone. If they can't find them, they're not going to read them or seek help. And if you're not encouraging them to, and nobody else does, they're not going to. Once your policies are being used as you intended, don't forget to review them. It's just nature. We do it. That's a continuous quality improvement environment. Check your processes. Do they match practice? We see this so often. Someone has a process in their policy and procedure, but it doesn't match what they do. That's so interesting. And we'll often see a policy and procedure where the form and the template and the tool aren't mentioned. In fact, it's a completely different name. That won't work either at audit. It's got to be kept up to date. Update them when they don't. When they don't match, please update them. Policies are only useful to you when they're accurate, because remember also, this is what they're going to ask for in a court of law, whether it's fair work, whether it is work health safety, whether it is whatever, criminal, whether it's civil, they're going to ask for the policies and procedures. And if what you've got written in there doesn't match what you're doing, you're going to be liable. There's just no wriggle room there. We've done audits where people look like they have a perfect process because we read their policy, we get there, and nobody has followed any of them. Not even one. And then we'll have people who have done a fabulous job, yet they haven't written down anything. So we can't give them recognition for that. So this is a spectrum. Some people have perfect policies and poor practice. They've never read them. Some people have perfect practice but poor policies. They never wrote their processes down. Once you make your updates, you need to send them out. You must. Otherwise, you could make those updates, scrumple them up and put them in the bin. You may as well, because if nobody knows about them, nobody can implement them. Educate. Policy changes are a big deal in other sectors. You know, they're a big deal because they could end you up in jail. They could end people losing their lives. They can end up with great big fines, and they can end up deregistered. You can end up injuring, one of those 700 or something a year who have a psychosocial disability now for after working in a support field. We must be updating these. So example for that, when the policy changed because the legislation changed for Anne Marie Smith, that's right, I remember saying to put this in. When that policy change happened in 2021 to the legislation after Anne Marie Smith's death, a lot of providers didn't update or read anything. Not for ages, not for years, a couple of years. Nobody bothered to update the changes from Anne Marie Smith's death, which were about the living alone and the one worker and all that sort of thing. People just didn't bother. They didn't know. And if they didn't know, I bet their staff didn't know, and nobody knew. So what do? Use team meetings, go through policy changes, have planning days where it's an hour or two here. The productivity you'll get back out of that, whatever money it's going to cost you to have, an hour here and an hour there or 2 hours here and there, the productivity that will come from that far outweighs the dollar value to it. You can do email changes out, or you can find a way that works for your staff and the culture in your staff, but it needs to go out. Find something that will work for your guys. Always ask your team what's working. They're going to love you for it. They're going to feel they're respected and empowered and part of it. And they will, if something goes in your policy that they suggested or part thereof, they're going to follow it because they're engaged. The non-negotiables. Customize your organisation. Please don't come to audit with insert your organisation here. No vague language. They must explain the how. Going back to that one that I gave you an example of, where it really just regurgitated the indicator. Reviewed every audit cycle at least. Okay, so that's sort of 18 months. Easy to access. If they don't have access, they can't read them. Collaborate. Do it in meetings. One study found, and this was, I think, a KPMG report, high engagement, collaborating leads to a 78% better uptake in caring about policies. Okay? So there's every reason to do it. Policy and procedure is better received when it's formatted. Here you go. In policy and procedure. So if they spent $100,000 of taxpayers' money to do a report that said policy separate.
Hi, Gina,
and then
sorry
procedure.
for cutting you off.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a question. Where can they get a copy of the presentation?
I will give you a copy of it in a PDF. Okay.
All right, there you go.
All right, and for anyone who uses our learning management system, we're going to put it up there as well, so you won't be wanting for anything. The webinar will go up, but I will also get this up as a little module as well. So there you go. I think we've pretty much come to the end. It takes a year. Oh, I like this. This is good. Use this. I really like this. So it takes a year to paint the harbour bridge, and then the harbour bridge is painted every year. Okay? So that's one analogy. Policy updates are ongoing. It will feel like a continuous loop, and that's because it is. It's meant to be. So think about it as the harbour bridge. Use that if you have to, with staff who, if you'd have told me 40 years ago about, quality improvement, I wouldn't. I would have thought you're off your head, But at one point in my life, it just all made sense. So for some people, it doesn't make sense. So try to help them to make sense of why you're doing in any way possible. Update policies, review your policies. Reviews must be documented and documents must be reviewed. Yeah? All right. I think we're done. Are there any questions? Comments? I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you to foster a culture of implementation. Everybody will be rewarded for that. It is how I ran my first, once I learnt quality improvement, I ran my business, not my business, it was an NGO, a not-for-profit. I had the most amazing record of success with the clients that I worked with in a rehab, and the staff, we just had best practices all over the place and fabulous outcomes. It just taught me so much. It really can give you the keys to success if you get this right and then grow. If you've already grown and you've got to retrofit some of this stuff, but it can be done. Okay. So I guess if we've got any further comments, please feel free to do it now. If not, we'll send you out an email. And thanks a lot for everyone coming, and to everybody who's watching this tonight or tomorrow. Enjoy, and we really hope you like all the questions. Thanks a lot, everybody. Any comments, Bobby, before we go?
Not a lot of comments, a lot of thank yous for you, Gina.
Oh, thank you, everyone.
Yes, and they love the detailed explanation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming along. And I'm so pleased so many people came it just means that things are really changing in the sector. So great.